Okay, hi everybody. So today I am filming my favorite books of 2020. So this is all books I've read in the year of 2020, not necessarily books published in 2020, just to be clear. I'm filming this on December 27th, so there is a possibility that something I finish before the end of the year, if I do happen to finish anything, could kind of like get bumped in, but with what I'm reading right now, I don't really think it's gonna really, cinch it. So this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. This year I read, honestly, a wild amount of books. I read about, as of this moment, I think 53 or 54, and my goal was 35, so I'm really happy with that. The circumstances surrounding that are not as great, considering it was mostly due to having just a lot more free time to read because of the pandemic that's happening, but at least out of my many 2020 resolutions, I exceeded the book one because I have a couple that are just so sad. It's like I wrote in my planner, make more friends and go to the gym and make more friends at the climbing gym, and I have not been in the gym since I think March, early March maybe, so there you go. Oh, I guess I should take a picture first. I'll start with the last book I read that I really loved, which is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. This was a really incredible book. I absolutely loved it, and I know there was a ton of hype about it, and I think I had been kind of hesitant to watch it to read it due to that. Oftentimes when books are really overhyped, I end up not liking them, but this book totally lives up to the hype. It's incredible. I love the writing. I loved the characters. It was so good. This book follows Evelyn Hugo in her life as told to her soon-to-be biographer, whose name I literally can't remember right now. Her would-be biographer's name is Monique Grant. She's invited to Evelyn Hugo's place, and basically ends up getting told all of Evelyn Hugo's life story. And this is a really great book if you love old Hollywood or if you are a fan of memoirs, because this very much kind of falls into those two categories, even though it's fiction. And I just really enjoyed it. I don't want to talk too much about the plot because I don't want to really give anything away, but this was such a quick read. It was so good. I can't recommend it enough. If you haven't picked it up yet and you like literary fiction or old Hollywood history or memoirs or things like that, this is the book for you. The next book I want to talk about is Rebecca by Daphne de Maurier. I think that's how you pronounce it. This book was such a good book. I have been wanting to get back into reading more classics, and I have found it a little tough, but I do think if I start reading them using audiobooks, I'll have a better luck with that, just because I think they're a little bit easier to digest when they're spoken. This book is a gothic tale that kind of follows a young new wife as she navigates running the estate of her husband, or attempting to anyways, but her whole job is kind of done with the shadow of the previous wife, Rebecca, hanging over her, and as she continues to live and work there and to try and fit in, Rebecca's shadow just kind of looms larger and larger, and it's very creepy, very slow burn, but very interesting, and I highly recommend it if you are looking to get into gothic fiction, especially classic gothic fiction. It was so good, and I do think it was a very easy read, which was nice because sometimes older books can drag a little, and this one I found very interesting. The third book I want to talk about is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. This is a book that follows the lives of two half-sisters and their relatives throughout history, and one sister is married to a slave trader and the other sister is sold into slavery, and you can follow their familial lines throughout history, and it is so compelling and interesting. I highly recommend it, as I recommend all these books in this video. I read this book for a book club that I run at work, and I was really happy to see that it was very easy read, very quick read, and I really liked the format of it because you basically follow one relative for each chapter, and that made it easy to digest and to kind of follow the narrative trails, because you're not like bouncing between different perspectives constantly. You're just kind of getting this very linear tale, and that was super well done, and I really liked all the different perspectives that were in the book. It deals a lot with like personal identity and our perceived understanding of who we are and where we come from, which is really interesting to read about, particularly from the perspective of such two different like kind of trails of familial lineage. It's just fantastic. I highly recommend it if you're someone who likes multi-perspective novels, if you're someone who likes family kind of drama novels, if you like really lit fic in general, you're gonna like this book. The next book I want to talk about is Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. This is a debut novel about a black nanny who works under a white woman in Chicago, I believe. I can't quite remember, and I don't own the book, so I can't quickly reference. But this book was so good, of course, it's in my favorites list. It's contemporary literary fiction, and it was, again, just a really digestible read. It's not a long read. It's a great book to kind of just sit down and binge. And it kind of just explores identity and politics and race in a way that I think is approachable to a lot of people. And while it isn't one of my highest rated books of the year, it is a book I kind of like every time I see it on my list. I'm like, oh, I like really enjoyed that book. It was just really good. Next book I want to talk about is The Library Book by Susan Orlean, and this is a sort of true crime novel that follows the history of the Los Angeles Public Library and explores kind of what it's doing now and what it used to do, and kind of just the whole trajectory of the libraries as a whole. And the main kind of like sticking point of the novel is returning to this great fire that happened at the LA Public Library and like the person who may have caused it and things like that. And while that doesn't sound crazy compelling or interesting, as someone who is a librarian and has grown up loving libraries, this book was just encapsulated everything that is so great about libraries to me as far as community service and the work that they do that's so important, and I just really loved it. I kept crying reading it, like I loved it, and it's a non-fiction book, and I feel like if non-fiction that's not like a memoir can make you cry, that's like pretty good. And yeah, it just had me like crying through most of it. So I had kind of not picked it up for a while, just mostly because I was like unsure of how much I would like it, but I absolutely loved it. I think if you're someone who has grown up in libraries or loving libraries or working at libraries, this is like a really great book for you. But I also think if you're someone who likes true crime, this is also a great book for you, because if you're someone like me who likes true crime, but sometimes I like to read true crime that's not necessarily super violent, this is a great option. I'm really interested in picking up her other book, The Orchid Thief, and hope to do that in the new year. The next book I want to talk about is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is a contemporary fiction / romance book that was absolutely so good and fluffy and exactly what you need. I recommend it highly as like a summer read, partly because it's called Beach Read, but also just because like the setting and I feel like the general vibe fits well with summer. But basically it follows two authors who end up being unwitting neighbors to one another throughout like this summer period. I believe it's set in summer, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure, so don't quote me. It actually might be winter now that I'm thinking about it. Maybe it was summer. It must have been summer, because they went in the lake, so I'm sure it was summer. Anyways, it follows these two authors from the perspective of the female author, name I can't remember, whatever, but basically she's dealing with a lot of different issues in her life, and then her neighbor ends up being this male author that she's always kind of had a rivalry with, sort of, and it's just it was so good, and I really love that it was both a romance and also kind of about getting out of a writing rut and, you know, kind of getting back on your feet and getting going again as someone who has had a lot of issues this whole year with getting into ruts and trying to like crawl out of them, just with like anything I like to do. This has been, it was such a good book to read for that reason. Like I just felt like it really nailed the difficulty of like trying to do stuff that you know you like to do, you know you're good at, and you just can't bring yourself to do it. Great book, and the romance was great, and the scenes that were steamy, so highly recommend. The next book I want to talk about is the Winternight Trilogy by Katherine Arden, and I only have the first book with me here, but I loved all three of them. They are incredible, like Russian folklore fantasy books that follow a young woman, Vasya, as she comes into her own power, and we kind of follow her journey throughout the three books. I want to read more of what Katherine Arden writes. I loved these books so much. They were so good. I think if you like Uprooted or what's the other one that Amie Novik did? Spinning Silver, you're gonna really like this book. It was just so beautifully written. I'm hearing like video game noises outside. Oh, this is the debut novel. So actually she probably hasn't written anything else yet other than these three books, but they were really good and I'm really excited to see what else she comes out with. Yeah, I can't recommend these enough. They were such a good read. If you're looking for something to read this winter and you want like a trilogy to jump into, I highly recommend this one. All the books also aren't like crazy long. I think they're all around 300 pages, and yeah, they're, oh gosh, so beautiful. And I love like kind of adult fantasy folklore books so much. If anyone has any recommendations for more of these, please let me know, because I'm constantly trying to find things comparable to this or like Spinning Silver or Uprooted, because they're just so good. I don't know, they really like scratch that itch for me. So highly recommend these books. I gave them all like 5 stars. I absolutely love them. Just like, ooh, just so good. And just can't talk enough about the series. It just blew me out of the water. Okay, the next 2 books I'm talking about are both by the same author, Madeline Miller, and the first one I want to talk about is The Song of Achilles. So I read this book early on in the pandemic and it just totally absorbed me. I kind of tried to pick it up I think once before and just hadn't gotten that into it, and then I picked it up again and was just like so into it. I loved it. This follows Patroclus. Oh, I know I'm saying that wrong. No, Patroclus. Okay. I was originally, when I was reading it, I kept thinking it was Patroclus, and then I started listening to the audiobook and realized I was just reading the name wrong. So yeah, this follows Patroclus and Achilles as they grow up and kind of become the men that they are known of in the myth of the Trojan War. And I absolutely just, I would read Madeline Miller's grocery list, truly. Her knowledge of like Greek myth and history is so well woven into a really compelling fiction novel. I just envy her so much. I think if you are someone who's ever been interested in Greek myth or enjoys kind of ancient civilization history sort of things, this is really going to be a great book for you. I also think if you're someone who kind of likes like doomed romances and things like that, this is a great book for you. And that's sort of a spoiler, but also it's based off of like a thousands-year-old myth, so I don't feel that bad talking about it. Like, we all knew how it was going to end. We've all heard of Achilles' heel, even though that's not really like actually a thing, so be warned, it's sad. The ending just completely destroyed me, and it's not even probably going to destroy you how you think, judging by the myth. But yeah, I just, oh, like it's lovely and heartwarming and sad and difficult and great, and I just loved it. So 5 out of 5 for me. Madeline Miller, I love you. So the next book is of course Circe, another supremely hyped book that I was very concerned about liking, and I absolutely loved it, so I'm really happy about that. Because again, sometimes I feel like I pick up a really hyped book and I'm just like really excited to get into it, and then it just sucks and you're like, okay, like I don't know, am I stupid or is everyone else? You know, you just kind of feel that way sometimes. But this book was just so gorgeous and well written, and again, her knowledge of Greek myth and history is so clearly like, what's the word I'm looking for? She just knows her stuff. She just knows exactly what she needs to, like, Madeline Miller just knows her stuff. This book follows Circe, who, if you have read the Odyssey or listened to a summary or something of the Odyssey, you know she's the witch that Odysseus encounters in the Odyssey. but she is sort of mentioned occasionally in other myths, and she does have kind of a rich history based on her parentage and things like that, and her siblings, and so Madeline Miller kind of weaves all those stories together into one narrative that describes Cersei's whole life, and it is really well done. I feel like this falls into a similar category to me as the Winternight trilogy, because this is largely about a woman kind of coming into her own power and creating her own narrative and kind of just like getting shit done, and it is just so good. Oh my god, I totally forgot I water damaged this. Wow, that's a bummer. Looks great still though, the cover looks great. I just totally did that to the inside. Oops, forgot about that. Still very readable. Oh well. Books are meant to be used. But yeah, I could wax poetic about this book forever, but it's just really great. And again, if you're someone who likes Greek myth, or you kind of like stories of like women sort of gaining power and agency in a book, this is a really great one. Highly recommend it. Alright, and the final one I want to talk about is also another trilogy. It is the Illuminati Files by Amie Kaufman and Kristoff. I read these sort of way before, like early February, I think, and then I think I finished it around March. I was really trying to read books in between these just because they are a little long and like a little intense-ish, and so I was trying to kind of break that up and savor them in a way, so to speak. These books follow several different protagonists. Each trilogy kind of focuses on one set of protagonists, and each is a heterosexual couple, so just so you know, I think there is like one gay character maybe in it, if I can, maybe. I will say like representation's not like superb, like there's nothing really like stand out about the plot, but the format in which it's written is really interesting, and I'm sure everyone and their mother has heard about this book, but you do get like, it's mostly told through chat logs and like video surveillance transcripts and stuff, and like classified documents, and so it's just like very entertaining to read. The audiobooks are really good, but also the books are really good. I kind of honestly recommend listening to the audiobooks with like the book available, so you can look at the drawings and like some of the redacted stuff and just some of the writing like and stuff like that there. It's like very interesting and neat, and it just it felt very like, I don't know, postmodern to me if I wanted to really kind of like English degree it up. Anyways, but yeah, well, I don't necessarily think again, a lot of the stuff's like super standout or original. I think the format in which it is presented is very interesting. And this is a YA trilogy, so I think if you are still someone who like enjoys YA trilogies to a certain extent, I know I'm getting pickier and pickier as I get older with really everything. This is a really great one. If you like sci-fi, it's a really great one. I think if you like space operas and things like that, it's also a really good one. This very much felt like in some ways playing Mass Effect to me in a good way, so really like that. And yeah, I think if you maybe even like have a friend or a teen who is a reluctant reader, this would be a really great one because it is just extremely digestible and interesting. Alright, that is all the books that I really loved in 2020. Thanks so much for watching. Check back for another video at some point. Who knows when? I don't know.